first and last. We're ahead of schedule. As many of you are aware, mental challenges have plagued the agricultural community, and it is past time that we do something about it. Here to help us better understand how to overcome these challenges is Becca Edlund, Director of Technology and Membership at the Colorado Farm Bureau.
Is she here?
Yes, Becca did this presentation at our Pro 15 Fall Conference. And it's something that we've been very aware of out in Eastern Colorado, and I'm sure the rest of the state as well. So welcome, Becca.
Thank you. Hi, it's an honor to be in this room. Some friendly faces, certainly some people I have a lot of respect for. What you guys do in rural communities is important, and we value you. So as she mentioned, I work for the Colorado Farm Bureau. This was an initiative that we started really in the heart of COVID. So it's probably June of 2020. We started talking about what money was coming up to address mental health specifically, and wanting to make sure that rural communities were represented in that discussion. Unfortunately, for most of our rural communities, there's a lot of stigma around accessing mental health services. For those of you in the rural communities that are fortunate enough to have a mental health facility, it's often in a building on Main Street that says mental health, plastered maybe even in stone on the building. It turns out farmers and ranchers especially don't want to park in front of that building. They don't want to be seen going in. The expectation is that someone will assume I'm going to come out in a straitjacket, or that by walking in that building, I'm suicidal. Those are unfortunate, really heavy realities if you're struggling, because it feels like there's no access to help. For farmers and ranchers, the idea is you pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I was talking to my executive director a few months ago, and he said, I remember when this conversation first started in Farm Bureau, this was 15 years ago. We had a call, everybody was talking about, is there a problem in ag that we can address? And folks started sharing. It took a while, but folks started sharing. And at one point, it had got about 5 minutes of people actually sharing kind of what the issue was. And someone said, well, in agriculture, what we do, we pick ourselves up by the bootstraps and we keep going. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you the bootstraps are broken. And so there needs to be an answer. So we knew, you could feel it in the water, there's a problem. When you hear of friends dying by suicide, when you hear of friends who are just struggling, you can see it in their eyes, but they can't say it out loud. There is a problem. It was not a question of if. So we started asking farmers and ranchers across the state, various different levels of ownership or employment in the farm or ranch, different commodities, different locations. What we heard consistently, there is a need. It is absolutely a need. Peer programs feel dangerous or risky. What they were trying to indicate in that is that there is competition, sometimes healthy, sometimes not, between neighbors in small communities. Everybody knows your stuff and you don't like that. So peer programs feel risky. One person indicated that they were struggling to a banker. The banker then denied their loan. That feels reasonably scary, right? So where if peer programs are not safe, what are the alternatives? Location matters. So I talked about Main Street, walking into the mental health clinic doesn't feel approachable. Privacy is paramount. I don't want everyone in town to know that I'm struggling or what I'm struggling with or what areas I need help in. Contextual awareness is necessary. So 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I guess, we started working with Colorado Crisis Hotline to help ensure that a farmer or rancher who calls the crisis hotline and says, I can't feed my cows, doesn't get the response, well, can't you just let them eat grass? Because if you're a consumer in the urban corridor, that's a reasonable, it's not a reasonable question, but it feels reasonable, right? Of course, can't you just let them eat what's growing? Well, well, yeah, but if I can't feed my cows, it's because there's no water, nothing's growing. Like there's so many other questions there that complicate that, right? So ensuring that the person that these folks are talking to understands agriculture, understands that if you lose the farm, it's not the same as me losing my job. Every day I go home to a house that my husband and I have complete control over. My family doesn't work in the same industry I work in, much less in the same organization I work in. My son doesn't go to the same school as everybody who works on my farm. Those kinds of realities allow me some separation, right? If you lose the farm, maybe your grandmother's house, your cousin, your nephew, they also lose their homes. And it's your home, right? Like it's where you grew up, there's legacy, there's all these things. And so making sure that folks understand that. And then it's cost prohibitive. The reality in our rural communities is most folks are under or uninsured. That's just reality. And so behavioral health services, I have phenomenal insurance. My husband asked for counseling services. They sent him to an EAP counselor licensed. In 4 sessions, the counselor fell asleep on him once, and he told him he was going to see apparitions of my dead father. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. So wanting to make sure that not only is it approachable, but that we have a good community of folks. So what we did in response was we built a voucher program, and our goal was quality, effective, applicable services for the broader agricultural and rural communities. So this is broadly accessible to all rural communities. In Colorado, I should be specific. Because of licensing, you have to be a Colorado resident. So camp vouchers, the goal is help wherever and whenever you need it at no cost to you. So we answered each of those needs specifically and intentionally with a group of folks from rural communities. So these were farmers and ranchers, behavioral health professionals from around the state working in rural and urban areas, but also adding to that other agricultural organizations. Colorado Corn partnered with us, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, folks from the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust. They were all at the table. We wanted to make sure that there was a broad range of voices in part of this discussion. So we worked as fast as we could. We use vetted licensed counselors. So a counselor has to come to us by recommendation or referral, and then we interview them. They have to go through an interactive program where we kind of are able to feel out, like, do you harbor hostile opinions about beef cattle? Okay, maybe you're not a fit for us. We want to make sure that those folks that we're sending people to, they're going to find a friendly person who gets what they do. Location. So we really focused on telehealth. State of Colorado spent a lot of money to try to get counseling services in close proximity to every resident of the state of Colorado, and failed. My sister-in-law, who's a licensed counselor, said, Becca, if the state of Colorado failed, so will you. Don't try. So we're not trying. And it turns out for farmers and ranchers, in a lot of ways, this is better for them because they don't have to go into that mental health facility. Privacy is paramount. So it's completely anonymous. In order to get the voucher, just by nature of, I have to figure out a way to give it to you, you have to enter an email address. I don't care if that email address disappears tomorrow. You just have to be able to get the number off of that email. And then the county of residence. And again, that's just being careful to protect our counselors that they don't breach their licensure working with us. So, and then context is important. So we do a cultural humility training. That training was designed by us as farmers and ranchers. As an organization of farmers and ranchers, we're able to utilize the stories we hear, the experiences of actual farmers and ranchers in the state of Colorado to make sure that these folks understand those experiences. And then we did fundraising for the vouchers, so they're free. Our cultural humility training, that's what I like to call it. Some people call it a competency or cultural sensitivity training. I like the word humility because I'm not going to be able to tell you or prepare you for every farmer or rancher story in the state of Colorado. It's not possible. They're vastly diverse and different lived experiences. I want to give you a context. I want to paint a picture of agriculture as a whole, and then you can find your person in that landscape and help kind of flesh it out. So we focus on the agrarian imperative, which is a documented philosophy around kind of a connection that a farmer rancher has to their land. Anyone who produces land, who produces something out of the land. Oh, sorry guys, I can be loud. I was trying not to be overwhelming. So it's largely focused on the land. So farmers and ranchers have this deep connection to the physical land that they live on, that they work on, that they till. And so making sure that that is communicated to these counselors and how some of that can be utilized actually as tools for them to then provide counseling in ways that feel tangible and approachable to a farmer or rancher. Every aspect includes anonymous stories. So I make sure that they hear the real life stories of our farmers and ranchers because they can get complicated. And understanding some of those nuance, not so that they can specifically counsel that one individual, but so that they can understand some of the complexities that go into a farmer or ranch. And then some industry and consumer education. A lot of folks don't realize that when you lose a herd of cattle in a flood in Colorado, that you actually lose generations of genetic rearing. You have tried to raise certain kinds of cattle for certain characteristics over generations. Like that takes time. And so making sure that folks have a feel for that. And then the training itself is 3 hours. So it's exciting to see how folks understand the agricultural industry, even from that, just that 3 hour time better. So I mentioned the agrarian imperative, the love of the land, the legacy that's rooted in it, the sacrifice and strength that goes into preserving that. And then farmers and ranchers are the same as me, my family on the urban corridor, in the sense that they have all of the same exposures to things that can create a mental health crisis, or even not crisis, just a need for someone to talk to. Addiction, mental health from generational issues around mental health, abuse, addiction. I would like to say that farmers and ranchers at rural communities are void of that reality, but none of us, all of us know that that's not true. But they have complicating factors that make this a very unique community. Those family pressures, the fact that you live, eat, work, go to school with all of the same people on the same land. There is no division there, no separation of work and life, but also just the resource, the generational pressures, things like that make it a little more intense, I think. All right, so this is an exciting thing for me. I get to introduce to you guys, you aren't the first ones to hear about it, but it's pretty early in the process. We are launching a new adolescent addiction support workshop. And we are going to be doing 4 of them this spring. So this workshop is designed for parents, really, but parents, youth pastors of churches in our communities where adolescent addiction is running rampant. There are many in Colorado, to come and learn how to be a supportive parent or a supportive community member. So the idea is to create a peer support, so you know you're not alone, that there are other parents who are walking through this and struggling and trying to do what's best for their kids. It'll include parenting tools. So following a counseling model around, I'm going to say the wrong, delinquent something parenting styles. Anyway, and then addiction education. So just understanding how addiction actually shapes your brain, how even before actually using, you can have a personality that is inclined toward addiction, making sure that parents understand that it's not a failure on their part or a failure even on their child's part, that it could be something that is actually genetic. And it's something that they can work through, knowing and understanding it better and having the tools available to them. And then safety planning too, and resource identification. So what resources are available to you and your family in those circumstances? These are coming in hot and fast. So back behind my colleagues there, Sean and Zach Riley, are standing in the back corner. There's more actually. So you guys are getting some of these.
I already bought those. These are the adolescent ones.
Okay, those are there's 4 different ones, and they're location specific. So the location, so in the back corner, there's one for Del Norte, there's one for Sterling, there's one for La Junta, and there's one for Meeker. If you are in one of those areas, and this is we're doing 4 of them. So those areas are broad, right? Like anywhere from Montrose to Steamboat Springs can hit the Meeker one. Anyone in the valley can hit the one that's in Del Mar. So the goal is to put those up in regular spaces, church bulletin boards, in your local coffee shop, places where someone who's in this situation, you may not know that it's happening, can find a resource and get connected to something that could be transformative. The guy, we're working with 2 counselors. One of them I know very, very well and have loads of respect for. He has 20 years of working with incarcerated youth, doing this kind of therapy, and just loves people. He comes from a rural background. He will speak this language. So encourage folks to participate in that. Then the other one is the generic one that we passed out first, I think. And this one is just to the voucher site. Put this in bathroom stalls in your community center. Put it in your bank branch if you have a bulletin board. Put this around and make it accessible. Folks don't want to go and be really obvious about it. What we found with the suicide hotline, with the Colorado Crisis Hotline, is that business cards work really well in rural communities because they're discreet. You can put them by your register. No one notices you're taking one. We wanted to have the same effect. So put this in places where people can discreetly take the information. There's also business cards on the back table behind Zach and Sean. These business cards have our website on the back, just a generic piece of information about what it allows you or grants you. Please use them, please take them. You guys are a terrific way for us to get this stuff out. And then like and follow us on social media, Colorado Agricultural Addiction and Mental Health Program. If you go through the Colorado Farm Bureau Facebook page, there's some posts recently that you can link through to make sure you find the right one. But this resource has great power to help some people who are really hurting. Suicide rates in our state among the ag community are still statistically ridiculously high. People are hurting. And I wish I could say that I'm making that up or that we're just guessing people are hurting. No, we know that people are hurting. So please make this resource broadly available. You all have the ability to take it to the spaces that you live in and share. So the one thing I'll say about this program that I think is different than any program I've ever worked on is we asked the question, and I believe it takes a village, but the whole village showed up. I mentioned we started this discussion, just started a discussion in June of 2020. I was completely funded and had this program running May 1 of 2021. I've never seen a program get money like that fast. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'll be honest. I didn't have any of the right connections. I didn't have any of the right, I asked the right questions. I took every faithful step I could in the right direction. But at every turn, the people who needed to be there showed up. This isn't a testament to the fact that the state of Colorado, there are many people in it who care about our rural communities, who care about agriculture. So please make this resource available. I set really low expectations because I know this population well. I wanted to get 50 people to use our voucher program. It's been live since May 1st, and I would like to tell you that we've had 10 people actually use the program. We've had 30 people request vouchers, and obviously 20 of them haven't actually taken advantage of them. That is telling that this population struggles with stigma around mental health, that people are even asking for help and not taking the next step. So please make this available broadly. We have to start changing the script on how we talk about mental health in these communities. And the first thing is making sure that help is accessible. All right, I think I have some time for questions, so hit me.
My name's Jim Jeffries, and my question is, I've seen all your flyers. There's not a telephone number on them, and not all your people in, I don't say rural or urban, are computer literate, understand. I'll picture that and take you to a website. A lot of times you have to make it Really simple, they can have a telephone call, maybe that is, you're capturing one segment of that population. The only person who doesn't have a computer in their house, which I know a few of them, they look at that and say, what are all the squigglies? What do I do? Why isn't there a telephone?
So that's a really good question. The primary answer is I don't have the resources to have a phone number there. So as often as we promote this program, we really do encourage folks to use the Colorado Crisis Hotline, because through that line, they can actually find this program. This is a referral point for the Colorado Crisis Hotline. The bigger thing that was for us, our goal was to act as fast as we could swiftly. And long-term, maybe a phone number is the right decision for us. And we're talking about that, but the anonymity piece seemed to be more important. And I don't have the means to connect folks anonymously to care by a phone number right now. I mean, maybe that will come. The other reality that we're finding is that the folks that are in that age demographic who don't have access to internet, the person who's going to connect them to a mental health resource is going to be a person. It's going to be someone in their house saying, hey, I think you're struggling. Let me do this for you. Here's the phone number you call. And we've had that happen. We've had a son or daughter or a friend in a family member or someone that they were caring for go into a home and say, hey, I think this person really needs it. They filled out the form for them. They showed them the counselors they could pick from, because they get to pick what counselor they want to work with. And then they called that phone number and got connected to a counselor, and they talk on the phone. That is a resource. It is a known, I'm not proud of, like, it is a weakness for us. It just was not an attainable part of the launch of the program. But I do think that at least right now, what we're seeing is that the folks who are even willing to ask for help are of an age that they either get the QR code or can Google Colorado Agricultural Addiction and Mental Health Program. So thanks. That's a good, it keeps it on my radar. Doesn't let me forget that I need to still think about what that looks like.
Hi, Rachel Richards, Aspen, Colorado. Very different from the ag communities you're dealing with. I just want to thank you for starting this program and moving it forward and presenting to this group. Resort communities are well known for having mental health issues, the wealth inequity you see, the beautiful surroundings while you can't pay your rent, and drugs, addiction, all these sort of things. So our community has a number of nonprofit providers, and we're trying to get them more coordinated in public education, including myself, who didn't know a lot about this topic. But one of the big presentations we recently had was the concept that you're promoting here, that it takes the whole community. It's really not about an individual deciding I need mental health help and going to get it. It's about the community members being willing to say, are you really okay? And the most difficult thing, which I really was unaware of, was saying, are you thinking of hurting yourself? And if they say yes, you say, have you thought about how? You have a need? I mean, to literally, because in the past, people dance away from those questions thinking that maybe they're going to help push somebody towards that. But in truth, if you don't ask, are you thinking of hurting yourself? You know, they'll just say, yeah, I'm fine. You say good, and you say goodbye, and that's over. And just how to get the whole community response, I guess, was the real effort. That it's not about just the police, it's not about just the mental health, it's about the employers, it's about co-workers, it's about friends, everyone looking out for each other and trying to recognize the signs and ask some questions that lead people to a different place. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Yeah, and if I can tag on to that, I think it's each of us in this room, our neighbors, and beginning the conversation and changing the way we talk about mental health. So I try to be really candid about my own use of a counselor, about my husband and I going to marriage counseling. And I remember distinctly being at church one day and talking to some friends of ours who have been married about twice as long as we have. They're a lot further along in the parenting process. They have teenagers now. And I said, yeah, we started seeing a marriage counselor because I wanted to give them opportunity, or I wanted to normalize that, because it felt like it was shame inducing for me. And they said, yeah, we go to a marriage counselor. We call it an oil change. Every once in a while, we just need, it's like regular routine maintenance. Why don't we talk about that? Because if they had said that to me, maybe my husband and I would have thought about going to a marriage counselor sooner rather than waiting until things were stressful. Today, I had a conversation with a farmer who I adore and has been really supportive of this project, talking about his dad who's struggling with depression. He calls it the finality of farming and ranching. When you retire, the last time you cash that grain check, the last time you drive that load, whatever that last thing is. In farming and ranching, that can be a devastating moment. And he was talking to his dad about how he answers certain questions when the doctor asks him, are you depressed? And he said, of course I say no, they're going to try to give me medicine. But even in the way this really caring, really open-minded farmer talked about it, he has a bias against medicine. And so I shared my own family story. My husband, I told him he had no choices. He had to go talk to the doctor or we were going to have a very different conversation. And so my husband did. Took a lot of courage, but he went and he talked to our doctor, and my doctor prescribed anti-anxiety medication. My husband has been on them for 1.5 years. There's lots of reasons why the doctor thinks that that's temporary. It's not a long-term solution for my husband, but it was a necessary interim step. I talk about that because I want people to know that medication isn't a personal failure. I talk about it at church because I want people to know that not every problem is solved by praying harder. I do think prayer changes things. That's my own personal conviction. I'm certain of it. But my husband wasn't like in some kind of moral failure and thus he needed medication. No, my husband needed medication because his brain needed that. His brain needed intervention. And so we have to change how we talk about mental health rather than shaming someone, even by accident, just, oh, they're seeing that counselor's kind of, whatever it is, like we just have to tighten up our communication a little bit. And at every opportunity around mental health, be more gracious, more considerate, more assuming that someone in that space is okay. Like someone who dies by suicide, to me, is the first victim in that space. They were so crippled by the things going on in their life, in their mind, in their souls, that they felt like that was the only option. That's devastating. In some spaces, we've created an environment in which they felt like they couldn't say, I need help. Not always. Sometimes they've had every opportunity and it just was too much. That's true too. But sometimes we have created spaces in which they felt like they couldn't say, I need help. We have to be a people, all of us collectively, who create space for people to need help and to celebrate that, to recognize that that requires courage and strength, actually. And so I would challenge all of you, in light of what you challenged, that it takes the community, and it's going to take all of us recognizing that we have to be careful about how we talk about mental health. Any other questions I can answer? Okay, I'm just going to put my plug in again. Again, behind the lovely man, Tony, right there with the beautiful hat on. One of my favorite people, not gonna lie. Anyway, back there, these business cards, these kind of generic, I need help business or flyers, get them to the camp website to request vouchers. It'll also, that same website has a link for the adolescent addiction support workshop, but then the specific location ones, please take them, please use them. Again, church bulletins or wherever you think that might be valuable, schools, parent hotlines, whatever. If you need other information, different formats, you can get to me through here. I have my business cards with me. I'm happy to share them. But you can, if you click on the info or the contact page, it comes to my email. I'm happy to send more resources to you if there's something specific you need to curate that as well. Thank you.
I might suggest the one thing that I didn't think of when she was with us in October was that I need to get those in a digital form from her to put on our Facebook page, on our website, on our Twitter feed, on our Instagram. And I'm sure she would share that for any of you here, whether it's Pro 15, Action 22, or Club 20, but any organization that wants to get that out. And with that,